The fighting game genre is one of my absolute favorites. I've been playing games from a variety of fighting franchises from an early age. I am definitely on the more casual end of the fighting fan spectrum, getting my start on games like Godzilla Save the Earth, Budokai 3, Tenkaichi 3, Soul Calibur, and Mortal Kombat. Every single fighting game that comes out is able to pique my interest to some degree because I just love the gameplay of stringing stupendously long combos together, grinding hour after hour in the lab, and seeing each game's suite of character-specific arcade endings. You're watching Rayl Deal Games, and in this video, I'm going to analyze why it is that I, despite loving fighting games, have never loved playing Capcom fighting games, like Street Fighter. And yeah, I have never loved playing Street Fighter, and the oddest thing about that is that I absolutely love, watching Street Fighter being played at any and all skill levels. It's common to like seeing fighting games being played at high level, and while that is absolutely excellent, Street Fighter is fun to watch at low and mid-tier levels as well for me. To figure out why this is, I'll be looking at the core root of my fighting game interest, what makes Street Fighter so fun to watch, and my experience with SF games. I drop new gaming videos each Friday, so if you end up liking this video, you may like my future ones. Subscribe so as to not miss out. With all of that established, let's dive right in. Fighting games are fun because of combos and footsies. If it weren't for these two elements, the fighting game and beat 'em up genres literally wouldn't exist. Combos do require a fair bit of work to learn, practice, and perfect, so it makes a lot of sense that my early fighting game forays were centered around extremely casual games, all of which are as far from being competitively viable as possible. Godzilla Save the Earth, Mortal Kombat Deception, and Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 frame the core of my early interest, and each of these games does an element of the fighting game genre differently. Godzilla Save the Earth is an arena fighter and is centered around making the catastrophic kaiju clashes of the Godzilla cinematic continuities a reality. Combos are fairly limited in this game, and nothing about this game is even remotely balanced. But that's what made it a lot of fun, as the game taught me the core concept of footsies. Most attacks in this Godzilla game are single hit with limited follow-up combos, and with the hit stun in this game, OTKing is incredibly easy. In terms of comboing itself, Mortal Kombat Deception provided me with an introductory lesson in 3D fighting game movement and combos. MK's dial-in combos are actually one of the major reasons why I've always had trouble learning Street Fighter, and punching in combos as quickly as possible is ingrained into my gray matter, as if Ed Boon himself inscribed it into my neural pathways with a high-powered laser. From Budokai 3, I learned to appreciate 2 and 2.5D fighting game movement and flashy powers. The way this game matched the anime, which I was super into at the time, was a major boon to my enjoyment, and it is because of these three games that I always had an interest in dipping my toes into other long-running and legendary fighting game franchises, like Street Fighter. In college, I got my first taste of SF by watching Street Fighter 4 tournaments every single week. I love Mortal Kombat. I love the characters, lore, and playing it. However, I don't like watching Mortal Kombat being played at a high level. Because of how homogenous the high-tier characters can be, competitive Mortal Kombat just doesn't have enough variety in terms of viable character picks. Street Fighter is different though. The reason Wednesday Night Fights, EVO, and various other tournaments and SF events stood out to me while in college is just how fun the games are to watch. Not to mention how iconic several climactic Street Fighter tournament moments are. Everyone knows EVO Moment 37. Even my friends, who have literally zero interest in fighting games, know about the Daigo parry. And much like many other people, this one short clip always makes me hyped to try out the series, despite how I've never actually had a lot of success in actually getting into these games when I have tried them in the past. It's not just EVO 37 though, as Hayao's incredible EVO Moment 38 is nearly as cool. I can't play Third Strike, but even I can recognize how cool these moments look with all of their clutch usages of the parry mechanic. Pairing is one of my favorite gaming mechanics, and it's something I love learning, so I've always wanted to really learn how to play Third Strike so that I could have my own personal, lower quality facsimile of one of these super hype moments. Valle on Hugo versus Bonchan on Sagat is also one of my favorite matches from SF4's competitive lifetime. Between Valle and Hayao, Hugo just looks like the exact type of character I'd like. I love big, stupid, grappler-style characters. Bowser is one of my favorites from Super Smash Bros. Ultimate because having access to command grabs just does something for me. I love playing Shao Kahn in Mortal Kombat 11 for a similar reason, as there's just nothing better than hitting slow and hard, with a tanky health bar to boot. I just love watching high-level players compete. It's like watching a complex game of metaphorical chess, where I'm literate enough in the game mechanics to be able to read interactions between each player. More so than any competitive game, fighting games lend themselves super well to the winning pop-off.
Oh my God! How did he do that? He went past the SA3! He went for the roundhouse! He jumped over completely! Do you understand? That is a worthless button!
I love super dramatic soap opera events sometimes, which is the reason I like watching reruns of Attitude Era WWE and UFC matches sometimes. But I've never found drama with tension so thick it hangs in the air like dark, wet curtains, as with fighting game grudge matches. The first that comes to mind is when Viscant and Low Tier God met to test their mettle in Street Fighter 4, leading to one of my favorite post-game interviews of all time. There's just a personality to fighting game competitions that other esports severely lack. COD, Overwatch, Valorant, League of Legends, each of these games are just far less interesting to watch, and I think this comes down to the way fighting games are much more personal. Instead of a team, it's a 1v1 slugfest. And honestly, the FGC is one of the better hardcore gaming communities out there, which definitely impacts the watchability of Street Fighter. My favorite FGC content creators are Maximilian Dude, JM Crofts, and Papa Lobster. Max covers essentially every fighting game, and he's super enjoyable to watch perform. But I also love hearing him talk about the history of fighting games and the arcade atmosphere he grew up in. I never really got the chance to go to the arcades when I was younger because of where I lived and how they were starting to disappear, but in my adult life, I love going to arcade places. Max is great at talking about Street Fighter in ways that both deeply explore the core mechanics of the genre and appeal to casual fighting game players. However, I do love watching SF videos about the in-depth mechanics of Capcom fighters, and my favorite creator that does this type of stuff is JM Crofts, who covers loads of SF mechanics that, to be honest, I rarely ever understand. JM Crofts is just able to talk about these mechanics in incredibly interesting ways. One of my favorite videos from him is all about Zangief's green hand, and honestly, I think the fact that videos like this interest me just shows how much I would like to play this series. It was high-level SF4 that got me interested in the series in the first place after all, and since I'm far enough out of college to be nostalgic for those old legendary matches, I love watching Papa Lobster's recaps of older FGC moments. My favorite from him is his coverage of Valle vs Bonchan, which is my absolute favorite SF4 match. Each of these creators are just really fun to watch, and they do great work at generating interest in fighting games, and they are just great representations of what the FGC is. Every community, literally every single one, has a subsect of extremely toxic fans, but the FGC has always seemed to have the smallest sect of toxicity, at least in my experience. Last year, I made a video critical of the new player experience of SF6, and instead of getting extreme pushback, there were loads of people in the comments trying to explain how to properly learn Street Fighter. As I gear up to try this storied series once more, I think back on that video quite often. Mortal Kombat 9 is the first fighting game I got some level of good in. By the time I finished playing the game, I was able to beat the final level of the challenge tower at max difficulty with every single character on the cast, and if I had access to internet at that point in my life, I would have played loads of it online. It was the first time I really tried to play a fighting game at any semblance of a higher level though, and Shao Kahn was super great at shoving my face into the dirt over and over again. Eventually, I learned how to beat him and began to grind on towers over and over again because I couldn't get enough of MK9's gameplay. I learned to play MK9 by alternating alternating between the lab and arcade towers, repeating the process until I felt confident enough to experiment with longer, harder to perform combos. When I tried to learn SF6, I messed up though. Combo trials didn't exist in MK9, so when I saw the feature in SF6, I thought this was Capcom's way of communicating to me, the player, that this is the best way to learn combos to use in the game. I learned quite quickly that some of these combos are incredibly difficult to accomplish, and Street Fighter defaults to showing their combos in terms of HP, LK, and loads of other button inputs that were incomprehensible to me. I could intuitively figure out that HP means high punch, but it took me a second to memorize which button that corresponded to, and one of the major barriers I encountered when trying to learn is how I needed to translate the combo inputs in my head before I could even attempt them. It was only after posting my video that I learned there's an option in the training menus to convert the button inputs to match the controller being used, and this one change would have made learning the combos much easier. My experience trying to learn this way made me think combos in these games were ridiculously difficult to learn, memorize, and implement in practical situations. Loads of the combos I learned for Cammy in this mode were completely useless in matches with other characters, which is the second major mistake I made while trying to learn SF. When a new NRS game comes out, I can pick up the new systems well enough to play online competently within an hour or two. I tried doing this with SF and it just didn't work. Even people at the lowest rank would stomp me into the dirt effortlessly, and it didn't help that I couldn't consistently pull off Cammy's super. There was even one moment when I used Cammy's super by accident, which won me the match, but like, how was my opponent supposed to see that coming when I myself didn't know it was?
That's me? What the heck? I didn't even know I did that. What the hell? I thought that was them. I thought they interrupted me. How did I do that? I literally just did a critical art and had no idea.
Just for reference, I played SF6 on classic mode because auto combos just feel like cheating. I know people like them and I'm okay with them existing, but it just isn't as fun for me, the player, to use them, as it takes control away from me. A lot of the fun of playing games is pressing the buttons, and anything that limits the pressing of buttons is just not as satisfying to play in my mind. What I should have done to learn SF6 is to implement my learning process for MK9. I should have hit the lab and slowly worked my way up the difficulty levels in the arcade mode. From there, I could continue doing this with each character, and doing this would have provided me with a deeper understanding of Capcom fighting mechanics in a scaffolded way. I detest looking up guides when I play games for the first time, including competitively geared games, so I'd like to learn how to play SF guideless, and that is the way I'm going to approach the series next year. Here's the thing, I absolutely love Capcom games. Capcom is one of my favorite development studios out there. Some of my first favorites from Capcom were their beat-em-up games, like Mutant Apocalypse. Historically, there haven't been a ton of Capcom games I've absolutely disliked, as these guys really are the gameplay kings in the gaming industry, both in the past and today. I'm the type of gamer that just loves to explore older games in long-running franchises so that I can see the growth of each series over time, and I want to do that with Street Fighter as well. As such, I'm going to play each Street Fighter game in order of release, skipping the first game because it's not a particularly good game at all. Since updating games after launch didn't start happening until the 7th generation, I'll be playing each version of Street Fighter 2, Alpha, and 3 and reviewing them separately, since at the time of launch, each revision was treated like a new game. I mean, people did have to buy a new physical game for their console or arcade cabinet to play the next game, whereas the updates for Street Fighter 4, 5, and 6 are done digitally. This means I'll be playing only the latest version of each of those for my planned playthrough of the series. Now, this is a huge undertaking, and there is no guarantee I'll actually be able to get into this series. However, if Hayao can rise to the top 8 of EVO at age 41, when his reaction time should be slowing down, I can try to finally learn to play this storied series at a rudimentary level. You can already see throughout the clips of my own footage in this video how I've started to learn how to play the neutral-centric game of SF a little bit just by reframing my preconceptions of what aggression, defense, and combos mean in a fighting game. I still have a long way to go though, so if any of you out there have suggestions on how to learn basic combos in Street Fighter, I'd love to read all of those in the comment section below. And that's the video, my guys. What's your favorite Street Fighter game? Tell me about it in the comment section below, and while you're there, consider liking this video, subscribing, and ringing that notification bell. I plan to cover loads of Capcom games next year, so if you like that studio as much as me, you'll want to stay tuned. If you have a moment right now, you may like one of my other videos on the screen. Regardless of what you choose to do, thank you for keeping it real with Rayl Deal Games. Have an awesome day, gamers.